Thanks for joining me today. This is Danny, and welcome to my Thaumcraft 5 survival playthrough series. This is a tutorial-style Let's Play series where we'll cover everything that Thaumcraft 5 has to offer, but rather than just pulling stuff out of creative mode and reading the Thaumcraft, we're actually going to be playing through the mod in survival mode. We're playing Minecraft 1.8.9, which is what Thaumcraft 5 runs on, and I've actually stripped down the FTB Unstable 1.8 mod pack just to grab a few mods to help us out with like inventory management and some decorative stuff. But we will be focusing exclusively on Thaumcraft for our tools, our weapons, our automation, and anything else that we can possibly do with Thaumcraft. I've already been playing here for a little while and built this house for us so that we could jump right into Thaumcraft 5. I did a little mining. We've got some iron, we've got some leather, and we've got some sugar cane. We're going to need all those things to get started. And actually we're also going to need some ink sacks and feathers as well. So, and I'll gather those resources off camera. This is our interior of our house that we're going to be living in. But let's get started right away making our first wand. So we're going to need to make 2 iron caps. And the iron nuggets, I believe that's actually a Thaumcraft recipe, and we're just going to take a stick and 2 iron caps, and this is going to make our very first wand. Hooray! Now this wand is the only wand that you can craft with vanilla crafting mechanics. It can store 100 of each type of V. If you've played older versions of Thaumcraft, the first thing you might think is, holy crap, 100, that's a lot more than we used to be able to. Well, a lot of things cost a little bit more now. But the other thing that's really cool is that we no longer have to run around looking for nodes in order to get V. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it doesn't matter because you don't have to. Because if you look in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see a little graphic up there that's got 6 kind of tubes sticking out of it. Each one of those tubes represents a type of V, a type of essence, of magical essence that exists in the air. It's here in the environment, and it's actually every chunk in the world has a specific amount of this V. Oh, I can't do that. It has a specific amount of the different types of V, and we'll be able to find out how much is in this chunk pretty soon. But first, we need to make the book that is going to teach us all about Thaumcraft. So the first thing we're gonna have to do is make a bookshelf. So we we just set this bookshelf down and we hit it with our wand. And ta-da! We have ourselves a Thaumcraft. And the Thaumcraft will tell us everything we need to know about Thaumcraft. However, it's only going to tell us stuff that we're ready to know right now. So when we start out, we have all these little bits of information, and each one of these things that we click on is going to tell us some information about different aspects of the mod. We start out with these 4 different categories. The basic information. Here we learn about the aspects of magic, about things that spawn in the world and that sort of stuff. Then we have thaumaturgy. This is going to be our wands and other tools and interesting stuff. And then we have alchemy, which we're going to get into, and artifice. And we'll be exploring all these things kind of simultaneously. We're not going to, like some of the tutorials, will just go 1 tab at a time and kind of explain everything, but that is not really how you play the game. I mean, you pretty much, when you're playing Thaumcraft, you're going to be all over this Thaumcraft. So, and that's what we're going to have, these 6 aspects that are in the air. And these are the primal aspects. And if we look in our Thaumcraft, under aspects of magic, the first time you click that, your game's probably going to lag for a while. Mine does, because it's loading a lot of information the first time you do it. But this is basically telling us about all the different aspects, and this is telling us about the primal aspects. So there's different types of aspects. And the primal aspects are air, earth, fire, water, order, and entropy. And they're called air, A-E-R, terra, ignis, aqua, ordo, and perditio. And then there are also compound aspects, which we're actually going to get into more later. We don't really need to know too much about these now, but they're basically aspects that are formed by combining other aspects. So right now, there isn't a whole lot of interesting stuff we can do with Thaumcraft because we haven't learned how to do any of it yet. By learn, I mean your character hasn't learned. how to do anything yet. So how your character learns is through research. So what we have to do is we have to make ourselves a wood table from Thaumcraft. This is just made with 3 slabs and 2 planks. And we're going to make a research table. However, in order to make a research table, we're going to need scribing tools. We may as well make 2 of these right away. Because we're going to need 1 here. Ta-da! Now we have a research table, and then we're going to need 1 in our inventory, along with some paper. Hopefully some of our sugar cane is grown. In order to do research, we have to have scribing tools and paper in our inventory. And when we open our Thaumanomicon, we can click on something that's kind of throbbing like that, or flashing, or whatever you want to call it, and we'll get a research note. So I'm going to start out by researching research expertise, which is pretty much what you should always do because it makes the research much easier. And you'll see what I mean. We take our research note and we stick it up here. We just shift click and it pops up there. And then we have this little mini game. And if you've played earlier versions of Thaumcraft, you may have noticed that we have aspects over here. These are the primal aspects. And every research note comes with aspects. So it used to be that your character had aspects and you had to run around the world scanning things in order to gain research points that you can use in the research game. And it was kind of, it tended to be a bit of a busy work thing because you had to be running around all the time. Every time you wanted to do some research and you were missing an aspect, you had to run around and find something to scan. That's no longer the case because every research note comes with a set number of aspects. So what we have to do is, remember how I said earlier that some of the aspects are combinations of other aspects. So with this game, what we have to do is join the different aspects by connecting them with aspects that either they contain or aspects that contain them. So like for instance, if we look at cognitio rather, it's ignis and spiritus. Spiritus is victus and mortis. So so what we can do is we can take an ignis and we can put it here, and you can see there's kind of a line kind of glowing back there, that these 2 things are connected. And then census, if we look here again, and there are online resources you can use to help match these more quickly rather than having to go into your Thaumanomicon all the time. But census is air and spiritus. So we can do air. I usually will go with try to bring it down to the primal aspect if I can. And it just so happens that ignis and air are lux. Whoops. So if we click on air, it ends up going down here. And then if we click on ignis, it'll take the other spot. If we click this button in the middle, it's going to give us the combined aspect rather. So we can go like that. And now all these are connected. So the only thing we have left is ordo. And I also happen to know that ordo and ignis makes potentia. So these will connect. And now, so these both have ignis. Potentia has ignis and lux has ignis. So we can put an ignis right here. And ta-da! We've got our first research complete. Hooray! Now I'm not going to show you all my research. Well, I'm not going to go through this process every time I research something because we're going to be researching lots and lots and lots of stuff. So now I'm just going to go right on to research mastery. And as it says, research mastery is forbidden knowledge, but it says in parentheses it's mostly harmless. Forbidden knowledge is knowledge that can give you warp. And we're not going to talk a whole lot about warp yet, but basically, to put it short, you could read all about warp here. But essentially warp is bad things that happen to your player, bad effects that your player can get randomly, and the more warp you have, the more frequently those random events will happen, and the more severe they will be. Eventually we're actually going to want warp. But right now, we're not quite ready to deal with warp. So we're going to try to minimize warp in the beginning as much as possible. But this is mostly harmless. It's really not going to give us any serious warp, so we're not going to worry too much about it. So here's another research game. But now, as you can see, because we got the research expertise, we can now click on this and see what it means. And basically, we have a 25% chance that we will regain a research point when we remove it. So if we make a mistake and we remove it, usually you would lose that point. Now we have a 25% chance that we're not going to lose it. We can also see when we hover over an aspect what it's made of. And then lastly, it gives you the ability to consume a knowledge fragment to add 1 point to each primal. Knowledge fragments are things that we will be collecting in the world by various means. Sometimes they're in dungeon chests, sometimes they're mob drops. Packs drop them. Crimson Knight, and the Crimson Cleric. I actually haven't seen any of those in this world yet, but they're in dungeon chests of all different kinds. So anyway, now you can see when we hover over this thing, it shows us what the aspects are that make up the compound aspects. So Potentia is Ordo and Ignis, as we discovered before, and so this is going to make the research game much easier. Now Ordo is a primal aspect. It's not made of any other aspects. So here's what I came up with. We have Census, which has air in it, and then Modus, which is air and Ordo, and then Potentia, which is Ordo and Ignis, and then Potentia again, and then Lux, which is Ignis and air. I did that one because all I needed was anything, because I had 2 Ignises here, so I just needed anything that had Ignis in it. And then Cognitio, which is Ignis and something else. But anyway, that's our research mastery. So we are now going to gain our first little bit of warp. Research mastery is completed. So now if we look in our Thaumonomicon, we see we have become even more efficient at performing research. Now we have a 50% chance of regaining the research point if we screw up. And we have a 10% chance that whenever you place an aspect, that it won't cost any research points. So it'll just be free. And lastly, we are able to combine aspects in the research table by shift-clicking on the aspect you wish to create. If you have enough of the compound aspect, they will. This was a lot more useful before. Now let's get into something more interesting. Why don't we get into wand foci right away? And we can see some interesting things that we can do with wands. Okay, here's what I've got so far. We have air, Lux, and I just used Lux in between both of those, and then I actually got a free Lux out of the deal. So I'm just going to use that to finish the connection. And ta-da! Now we have... So remember how 1 out of every 10 times we don't have to use the research point, and that happened to me this time with the Lux. So we now have wand foci complete. Now wand foci are things that we can put on the tip of our wand in order to make it do cool things. So our first wand focus that we're going to have access to is the fire wand focus. I'm going to have to do a little bit more resource gathering before we'll be able to do that, but this might be a good time for us to go out in the world and see some of the world gen stuff that's in Thaumcraft 5. If you've played the earlier versions of Thaumcraft, you may remember the infused stone. You'd have like stone that's infused with all of the different primal aspects, like air infused stone, fire infused stone, and all that. We no longer have the infused stone, we now have crystals, and these crystals will appear in the world and they will spread based on the aspects that exist in the air. So it looks like where we are right now, there must be a lot of earth, a lot of terra aspect, and probably some fire, and down there that looks like that's probably Ordo. And when we break these guys, we get these shards. Hooray! And the shards are very useful for a lot of crafting recipes and lots of other things that we're going to be doing in Thaumcraft. So we're actually going to want to collect several shards of every type of all 6 of the aspects. So I'm going to do a little exploring around to find some of these shards. And when we break these shards, we want to make sure that we leave some behind so that they will spread again, because they do spread. And you can see when we break them with a pickaxe, we get them all. So now we have 7. Later on, we're going to be able to use our wand to grab just a single crystal. But one thing to be careful about is that when the crystals are against 2 blocks like this, you're actually going to see the crystals on both block faces. Even though there's actually only 3 crystals here, you can see 3 on each block face, and it gets even worse when you're in the corner, because here again, well, here we actually only have 2 crystals down in this bottom corner, but you see 2 crystals on each corner, so it looks like there's 6 crystals there. And remember, you always, oh boy, it's getting dark. You always want to leave some crystals behind so that they'll spread again. And the crystals, they kind of act like batteries. So when we start running out of V, or if we start using a lot of V in our environment from doing different stuff with our wand or whatever, I need to get home because I don't really have any protection out here. We'll be using V in the atmosphere, and if we use too much of it, there is a possibility that things will fall out of balance, and which could result in taint. Oh boy. And the crystals will actually dissolve, sort of, you could say, into the atmosphere. So for instance, where we just were, there were a whole bunch of earth crystals there. If we would ever run out of Terra Essence here, those crystals would dissolve, or some of the crystals would dissolve. They'll never all dissolve, but some of the crystals will dissolve and add that Essentia back into the atmosphere. And besides the crystals, there's one other thing that we find in the world. Well, actually there's a few other things, but one thing in particular that we find in the world, and that's this amber-bearing stone. I believe this is the same as previous versions of Thaumcraft. It gets us amber, and that's something we'll be using for some recipes, actually probably relatively soon. And here's yet another resource. This is Cinnabar, another Thaumcraft resource. Oh, but we do need iron to break that. And I still have a stone pickaxe right now, although I've got plenty of iron. Cinnabar is what we're going to use for making Quicksilver. I'm pretty sure it used to be the case that the only way you could make Quicksilver was with shimmer leaves. Found some diamonds. I know this has nothing to do with Thaumcraft really, but I always gotta show you my first diamonds, man, right? Hooray, 6 diamonds. Nice. So I'm actually out looking for a desert. I found a village, and I found a silverwood tree. Hooray! Silverwood trees are somewhat rare, except in magical forests, and they very rarely drop saplings. But what's great about them, one, is that the wood can be used for a lot of different things that we're going to be getting into later, like better wands. And also, when you plant a silverwood tree, it has a chance of growing, or of spawning a pure node, which is a aura node. Aura nodes are where essence comes from. But the nice thing about the pure node is that a pure node actually absorbs flux. Hopefully we'll get a sapling from this. The saplings are extremely rare, and I'm pretty sure that they're even more rare in Thaumcraft 5 than they were in earlier versions. Because I used to get one from just about every tree I cut down, and I would say in Thaumcraft 5 I've probably gotten a sapling from about half of the trees that I've cut down, maybe even slightly less than that. And then growing underneath most silverwood trees, you'll find these shimmer leaves. Shimmer leaves have a couple of uses that we're going to be using later. One of them is to make Quicksilver. However, I would not waste I wouldn't waste a shimmer leaf on Quicksilver, because you can also make Quicksilver from Cinnabar by smelting it. What they're really going to be useful for is making ethereal blooms in the end, or later, when perhaps flux becomes an issue for us. Or taint becomes an issue, because shimmer leaves will actually, well, not the shimmer leaves, but the ethereal bloom will remove taint. Ooh, it's an angry zombie. That is a Thaumcraft mob. Hooray, we have silverwood. Here's another type of Thaumcraft tree. This is a great wood tree. Greatwood trees are a lot more common. You pretty much find them in every forest. And they're freaking huge. You can get a lot of wood from one of these trees. This particular tree has spiderwebs on it, which means that it is infested with these guys. These spiders. And they are poisonous. Kind of like cave spiders. Actually, they are cave spiders. There's a spawner right there. And then underneath the spawner is a dungeon chest. Hooray! Wait, let's find that last one before we... Yeah, whatever. Alright, a knowledge fragment. Hooray! Knowledge fragments give you XP. They also give you points. After we did our research earlier. Ooh, a name tag. And a bucket. Hooray! We actually have a bunch of these trees close to our base too, where I'm actually really far away from the base right now. I've been out looking for a desert because I want to gather some cinder pearls, because you can make blaze powder out of cinder pearls, and it's just a flower that you find in the desert, and there's no way to produce it or grow it or anything like that. You just have to find it in the desert. It's the Crimson Cult. So throughout the world, you're gonna find these obelisks, and they have little banners around them and other such things that we're going to be using those later on, much later actually, in the game. They are hostile. Actually, the cult members aren't necessarily hostile, but there are guards that you can see walking around. They are hostile and they're pretty tough. So you're gonna want to be careful not to get too close to those until you're ready for a little bit of a fight. Especially if there's several guards. But they won't come after you unless you get close. They're guarding it. They're basically guarding the cult. And the cult, they're over there, they're chanting. But if you kill these guys, they actually have some pretty nice drops. So I'm not gonna mess with these guys right now, but I did do a waypoint here so that we can find them in the future, because we might come back here and mess with them later to get some of that cool armor and stuff. Well, I've given up on looking for a desert. I've been traveling for a very, very long time, and I don't want to waste too much time on that, but I did find quite a few goodies while I was out. I actually found another dungeon tree and I got a Thaumium sword. I'm actually going to save that for later. When we can do some more interesting stuff with it. I got a mundane ring, which we can do stuff with later. I made a crafting table. I got more arrows. Actually, I'm going to hold on to those. I found a village, so I got a carrot and potato from the village so that we can start farming that. Actually, our golems will be farming those for us. And I also grabbed the books from the library in the village, and just a few greatwood logs. And a few other odds and ends along the way to kind of help us out. So it looks like we're gonna have to go into the Nether, because one of the things that I really want to do is I want to make our first wand focus today. But before we go in the Nether, there's one other place I would like to visit in the overworld, just to kind of complete our exploration of Thaumcraft World Gen. And that is a very rare biome that we're lucky enough to have right near our spawn. And I made a little pathway to it. And that is the magical forest. This is a Thaumcraft biome, of course, and it has a number of different items that are really cool. We've got these big, huge oak trees, and that's really most of the forest is filled with that. And you can see the grass and stuff is all kind of slightly different colors. There are lots of silverwood trees in the magical forests. And then we have these mushrooms, these vishrooms. They really don't have much use, but if you stand by them, you get nauseous. So it's a good idea to get rid of those so you don't have to deal with that. But you can use those for Essentia as well. Oh, you know what? They have Aurum. Oh my gosh. Cool. That is really good to know. Oh, look at, there's another dungeon tree right there. Nice. This is actually a pretty big forest too, a pretty big magical forest. But we have a nice place nearby where we can get a lot of good magical resources. Oh, actually you could kind of see it. It was... Oops, right there. Oh, is that all? Oh, we got a mundane amulet. Okay, that we'll use later. I guess the saddle might come in handy if we decide to get into horses, which we probably won't because we'll be flying in before too long. There's also a special mob that you can find in the magical forest called a peck. I actually saw one earlier in here. They're actually classified as a hostile mob, but they are, I guess in a way they're a little bit like Endermen, except that they don't get mad when you look at them, but they're usually happy with you, or indifferent to you, really. But they'll tend to avoid you. They tend to run away from you. But you have to be careful because anything you drop, they'll pick up. I cut down a silver tree once, and I got a silver tree sapling, and a peck almost came and stole it from me. That would have made me very mad. But if you can trade with the pecks if you give them like gold or other shiny things, gold coins, which we can get from loot bags. And of course we got all these shimmer leaves. This will be a good source of shimmer leaves for us. In fact, I might as well just pick a bunch of them right now. But if you throw a bunch of gold and stuff on the ground by a peck, there's a chance that they will become friendly with you for a little while. And when they're friendly with you, there's a chance that they'll give you stuff. Some rare things that are difficult to find otherwise. I'm in the nether. I got some nether quartz. And I see some wisps. These are another Thaumcraft mob. You can only find them in the nether now and in the magical forests. And they're usually passive. However, if you get too close to them, sometimes they'll get a little hostile. That's the noise they make. And they'll strike you with lightning. Like this lightning kind of thing, and it hurts. So try to keep your distance from them, although they're not terribly hard to kill if you can get a couple hits in. And they'll drop they'll drop ethereal essences. Well, I just got attacked by a bunch of wisps. They're like totally ganged up on me, and they almost killed me. I ended up killing 2 of them. That is really weird. That's never happened to me before. But it took about 4 arrows to kill him. I want to go pick up my glowstone. I probably got like at least a stack over there. I was just collecting glowstone. One of them just came and flew right up in my face. He's all acting all innocent and stuff. And then he flew away. And then all of a sudden he comes back and starts zapping me. And then I look and there was like 6 of them. Oh, my glowstone. Oh, another one died over here. Look at that. It looks like an Ignis one. My soul sand, or my glowstone is over here. So yes, do be careful with the wisps, especially if you see a lot of them. Apparently they gang up. I've never seen that happen before, but yeah, that was really interesting. I had to run back into the overworld to recover because I was almost dead. Because they were just zapping me like crazy. And after I fully recovered, I just came back and kind of started pegging them off one at a time over here. The wispy essence is nice because it's got Aurum, and Aurum is a little bit harder to find. Just completed the research for our shock focus, so we can take that and discover, and now we can read about it, which I'm not really going to read about it, but so now we can craft this guy. Remember, we made this table so that we could make our research table, and we used scribing tools in order to convert the table into a research table. Well, if we take that same table, where do I want to put this? This, and we hit it with our wand, and we end up with an Arcane Workbench. So the Arcane Workbench is just like a crafting table. We can even do vanilla crafting recipes in an Arcane Workbench. See, we can make sticks or whatever. But we can also craft things that require V. So for instance, right now we want to make our shock focus. If we look at the recipe, it's showing that it's in the Arcane Workbench. And here's our recipe, and then it shows that we need these particular V. So we go like this, and we have to stick our wand in the Arcane Workbench. See, if we don't put it in there, we can't do anything. We put the wand in the Arcane Workbench, and it's actually going to extract V out of the wand. Remember, this wand can hold 100 of each aspect. Ta-da! Now if we look at our wand, we'll see that it only has 17 air now, and 17 ordo and 45 peritio, because it took those out of the wand. But then of course if we put it back in our hotbar, it will start to charge again. So now we have a wand focus. This is the shock wand focus, and wand foci, that's the plural, are things that we can put on the tip of our wand. So if we hold our wand and hit the F key, all the wand foci that we have in our inventory will show up here, and we can select the one that we want, and ta-da! And just in time for nightfall. However, unfortunately we are out of time, so we're gonna have to wait till the next episode before we go out and find some volunteers to test out our shock focus on. So the next episode we're probably going to upgrade our wand to something that can hold a little bit more V and is a little more efficient, and we're going to start getting into some basic alchemy. So I hope you join me for that. If you did enjoy this, please don't forget to click the like button, and join me next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.